Hello, and happy Sunday morning. It is Scotland Rugby News coming to you with me, your host, Bruce Aitchison from Happiness Egg Shaped, and Mr. Editor Extraordinaire, the man with a crystal ball, the man that has the vision, he has the sight, he's got the skill. He called this semi-final victory. He called Dunky Weir in for Ross Thompson, and then he called Glasgow to win the whole shebang in South Africa, the one and the only Gavin Harper. Sir, how are you?
Very well, very well. How are you?
Do you know, sir, I'm still not really believing it. I'm flicking through social media, looking at, everybody saying congratulations. And my name's Doddy Foundation, Scottish Rugby, British Lions, Rangers, the other clubs in the URC. I thought Vodacom Bulls have been really gracious with their well dones. And no, well, on social media they have.
The social media team has obviously a different attitude to the head coach.
Well, and we can talk about that, and people saying this is the biggest result in professional rugby history for Scotland. It's because this is unfortunately for that squad that did it the first time. This is a bigger deal the way it's been done, the inclusion of South African teams, but the absolute joy that it's brought. I mean, this is massive.
Like you would never believe, and I think this will make teams and people stand up and think, actually, do you know what? Glasgow Warriors deserve to be in that top table of European competitions of the URC, but the challenge is going to be now for them to back it up and not be that was a bit the problem with the 2015 was it became a flash in the pan. It was the culmination of that team with Al Kellick and Dougie Hall retired, and they kind of faded away after that. The season after was a bit of disappointment. So actually the challenge for Franco and the team is now to say, this is the first one. We've got to go and now make sure we're in these playoff finals and semi-finals next year and the year after.
Well, it's interesting you say that because Franco's made, I think, quite a big point of that in everything that I've read last night and this morning, saying, this is part of a journey. This is not a full stop. And sometimes there can be that feeling of, I suppose in some respects in football, Liverpool did it. They won it and then they've not necessarily been able to back it up. Hibs won the Scottish Cup and unfortunately haven't been able to back it up in the way that we all hope. But you get, Franco said that it probably wasn't the plan to win it this year, but then plans go out the window. There's just a couple of wee things I want to mention and see what your thoughts are. There's the usual. There's been a few folks saying the team that finished fourth shouldn't win the whole thing. And we've been through that in the club game here with Curry winning. But there's also, European competitions where there's the group. It's hard for those teams to get out the group when they have to perform so many times. Whereas look at what a knockout's just done for Glasgow. Now, I know they've gone bang, 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 right? But it's much tougher in a group when there's that security. So there's the setup of competitions, I think a lot of people are talking about, aren't they?
I think that's fair. I think, do you know something? I think the model of the Champions Cup and the Challenge Cup, I used to love back in the day when it was the old Heineken Cup. I think they've probably not quite got that right in the current format. I think that probably does need a bit of looking at, but you're 100% right that, if we were into knockouts earlier, actually you raise the jeopardy stakes massively early on, which gives you games like last night, like last week in Limerick, like the Stormers game. It's definitely a conversation that I think the powers that be should be having. The other thing about winning the league and finishing fourth, I get, if you were a Munster fan and you finished top of the league, you've been the best team over the regular season, you'd be gutted. That's not how the league works.
I know, and folk know it at the start, so I'm not making a big deal of it, but I have seen a few folks saying, "Congratulations, Glasgow," but the team that finished fourth shouldn't win the whole thing. But to me, it almost becomes a separate competition. And if you were going to say, right, let's make it as hard as possible. You need to win your semi-final away to Munster, and you have to win the final in front of 50,000 screaming South Africans away with 6 days' notice, pretty much, to organise it. It can't really get harder than that. Like even those details make it massive.
It's enormous. Like, to go to Munster last week, and like we talked about this during the week, we talked about it last weekend, but to beat Munster in Thomond Park is at any stage of the season is a great achievement. To beat them in a semi-final, they're a different team when it's like knockout rugby. They were defending champions. To beat them in a knockout game on their own patch, to strip them of their title, was a huge statement. But, you know, not many teams, whether you're an international team playing the Box or a visiting team playing the Bulls, not many teams win at Loftus. Like, and there's the reason that sign altitude, you know, 1,350 meters, it matters, because it genuinely does matter. And some of the Glasgow boys looked absolutely burst at the end of that, but they got what they went for, you know, and it was right. Just
so. Let's use that just a second. I'm going to butt in here because he's done it again. Xander's done 80 minutes again, and you know, let's throw in the massive job again. South African team, and no matter what South African team, if you ask any pundit or MD that knows nothing about rugby, they'll go South African scrum is, but you know, they love the breakdown, they're physical. But to do it at that altitude, I mean, Xander deserves a fair holiday. Like, give the man 3 or 4 months off, because he's going to have to do it all again for Scotland come autumn tests. He's going to have to do it for Glasgow when it matters again, you think, because there's not really an heir apparent there.
I mean, you're spot on. There was a slight pause for me there, because I thought you were going to say he's going to have to do it for Lions. For me, that is now, like, we talked before the 2021 Lions tour about, you know, how many Scots will get on the tour, and, you know, it'd be nice to have some names after a bit of a barren spell. To me, that discussion stops, and actually last night goes away to that, because somebody like, you know, take aside from somebody like Finn, like Sione, Xander, I think Jack Dempsey are, for me at this stage, shoo-ins. You just have to find room for them in some capacity. And now actually the conversation should be, right, how many Scots can get in the team to play the Wallabies next summer? Because 37 Xander will not be far away. So yeah, let's hope he has got no plans to do anything over the summer, and he wants to sit in his house with his feet up and just rest for, like you say, 3 or 4 months, because my God, he might need it.
Pal, I've met Xander's wife. There's no chance he's getting to sit with his feet up. Not a chance. And the kids will not be allowing him to sit down. But you just hope. I mean, I take my hat off to him. And then his brother gets player of the match. I've seen a few.
How good was he?
Well, I've seen a few folks saying, "Oh, maybe it should have been Dempsey." But Matt, for me, he's always been a player, but it seems like he's got a steel or a toughness just very recently that maybe is a Glasgow thing as well, because I've seen, you know, you can't have a soft underbelly for this running that they've had and the way they've coped with Franco coming in. But Matt Fagerson just seems to be absolutely loving things at the moment. And I mean, imagine doing that with your brother. Imagine going to South Africa and winning the whole thing with your brother. Like, what a story.
Yeah, it's incredible. And I think he spoke a wee bit about that last night, and he just said, you know, he actually was struggling to put it into words what it meant for him and for their family and partners, etc. But I feel like there's been a bit of a change in the way Matt plays. I feel like if you look when he kind of first came onto the Scotland scene, I think he was maybe a bit flashier. You know, he wanted to play at number 8, Whereas now he seems to have kind of embraced the fact that he's going to play 6 for Glasgow, probably play 6 for Scotland, and he's become just a right nuisance. And I mean that in the best possible way. He's become like Scotland have lacked a Peter O'Mahony, somebody that gets in folks' faces and just annoys the opposition. I'm trying to say that in the politest way without either offending anybody or saying something I shouldn't on here. But do you know what I mean? It's that hard edge that I think he's added that makes an awful difference. And he showed it in Munster, and he showed it last night because he stood up to, everybody in the build-up, certainly from a South African point of view, was talking about Cameron Hanekom and the way he kind of was one monster attack on Caelan Doris in the semi-final. But, Glasgow just kept sending him back from where he came. So, yeah, the three of them worked so well. Darge and Matt and Dempsey, they were so good. But
the blend's quite interesting, I think, with those three, and it would be difficult to say there's somebody else to play for Scotland other than those three.
Yeah, I find it difficult. I think particularly because they play together week in, week out, I think I would find it hard to break that combination up. People will talk about Jamie Ritchie, Hamish Watson. There you go. Jamie Ritchie, Hamish Watson, Luke Crosby. There's three from Edinburgh, Magnus Bradbury. But those Glasgow three are playing so well, and they just complement each other so perfectly that, for me, they're stick-ons as well for the Scotland team.
Yeah, what a back row. There's a few names. Can I single them out? But there are a few I do want to mention, and all three try scorers, I think, deserve a mention. Not necessarily just for the tries, but we'll start with Cummings. We mentioned him. We've spoken about him a few times. He had that sort of spell with Scotland where he couldn't do no wrong, but he was performing really well. It was right, the future's bright. Here's a ball cut. He hits the line and takes the ball off 9 and was making real damage for Scotland. And then it just kind of seemed to fade a wee bit. Last night, he stands up and he's able to go again and again and again. He's relentless in his work ethic. But another one that just seems, I don't know if it's Franco, I don't know if it's the collective. Franco has to take a lot of credit, and we'll come to him later. But Cummings, superb.
Just as you say, just totally relentless. I think Big Richie's obviously just come back from a long time out. And there was that disruption and not then having Max Williamson on the bench. He dropped out just before kickoff. And I think you're then looking at Scott Cummings and saying, right, you're going to have to stand up. You're going to have to play 80 minutes here. And you're going to have to do the majority of the carrying from that second row point of view. And you're going to carry the ball into 125, 130 kg blokes, and they're going to knock you back, and you're just going to have to get up and do it again. And he did it. And actually, the Glasgow line-out wobbled a wee bit at the start. I know we'll talk about it in a minute, but I thought George Turner's introduction helped that. But you've got to credit the line-out callers, Richie and Scott, for saying, look, let's sort this out, and because that could have become a real problem. But I think you're right that Scott Cummings is another one that looks totally reborn, if you like, by whether it is Franco. There must be an element of that, but he looks like he's really hit his best form again. And yeah, I mean, some of these boys are obviously going on the Scotland tour, and he's one that I think it maybe makes sense that he can kind of continue that on a wee bit.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting for a leadership perspective for him to go and be one of the senior players with Scotland. I do wonder, and I don't know because I'm not in the camp, but I wonder how much he's benefiting from Richie Gray. I would imagine that's a really positive relationship. The next one, you mentioned him there, George Turner, away to Japan. I'm really pleased for him because he's a good guy and he's not always had it easy, George. And to a certain extent, he's not had it easy this season either. But to come back, to come on to a game like that, I can't imagine what it's like playing in the front row, at club level, never mind being an international or going into a game like that. But you're standing on the touchline there. I think George would be a magic poker player because his expression hardly ever changes no matter what's going on he goes, and boom. And he, Johnny Matthews I've talked up a lot and try scoring, but George Turner, his strike rate's pretty decent as well. I hope it goes well in Japan, and I hope we've maybe not seen the last of him.
100%. I totally agree with that. I hope Japan is a good experience. I hope he makes plenty of cash, but I also hope he comes back in a year or a couple of years' time, because I think we look at players now and see they're 30, 31 and think, this is maybe getting towards the end. And we actually talked about this with Big Richie. There's every chance George Turner comes back and plays another 3, 4, 5 years, because as a front row, you're maybe entering your best years at 31. So, there's no reason he couldn't come back. He maybe wouldn't be the same player, but that's a discussion for another day. Last night, he was superb. He came off the bench, the line-out, which can sometimes be his Achilles heel, I think is fair to say, was spot on. He absolutely levelled somebody as the Bulls attacked Glasgow's 22, and I thought, I would want no part of that. That looks horrific. And yeah, it was a game that was made for somebody like him, just to get sleeves rolled up and get absolutely stuck into them. And he did that 100%. What a way to finish his Glasgow career for now.
Class. And you just wonder with Japan, different lifestyle, different approach to training, games. I don't know enough about it, but you hear people saying how, there's Richie Mo'unga seems to be loving it and saying it's competitive, but it's maybe not as relentless as a travel to Italy in December, and then a trip to Connacht in January, and there's a lot of benefits I'm hoping he sees. And then the next one's another one. Hugh Jones was everybody's favourite. He was flavour of the month. Then he kind of falls out. He goes down to Harlequins, and there's a bit of out of sight, out of mind. Sometimes I feel when players go away for under our nose, he comes back. It was is he just filling a jersey? But and he's not perfect. But what he gives it's not even an X factor. I think he's established a level of consistency now where you know what you're going to get, and he tends to deliver.
I think that's right. And look, he's got something that not many other centres, particularly in Scotland, have got. He's got that turn of pace. He's got an eye for a gap, but actually, he just complements. We talked about this last week as well. He complements Sione perfectly. That partnership, when Hugh was out injured, and then when Sione was injured just at the end of the Six Nations, Glasgow badly missed him. I think that Stafford's had a great season, but Glasgow just look the real deal with them at 12 and 13, and actually the same applies to Scotland. So the challenge will be how they manage that over the summer, and make sure that we're not totally reliant on them as the same way that we've maybe been on Finn or Xander or so. But I thought he was really good last night. I thought even the recovery through a dodgy pass to nobody in the first half, and even his recovery, probably the one thing Hugh was criticised for before was his defence, and actually just put his head down. He was full tilt, 60 metres to catch Ambrose Papier, and he got him, and he won a class turnover towards the end of the game. I think was negated by the Tom Jordan yellow card, but look, he was terrific. But like you say, we could literally sit here and pick out 23 names and say they were amazing, they did brilliantly. And even Dunky Weir, who didn't get on, was leading the post-match charge with some dreadful singing and dancing that he will be mortified, I'm sure, at this morning, but probably not really care that much.
I'm not sure he'll be caring. The balance across Glasgow, the back three, none of the three of them probably that outstanding. I would say, it's maybe a bit harsh, but they're they're good players, but they've delivered again and again. The centre partnership you've spoken about, Tom Jordan wasn't a 10, but now he's a 10, and folk are saying, well, Hastings is going to have to work even harder when he arrives. George Horn, British Lion, no question, has to start, has to be the Lions goal kicker, probably should be the Lions captain. Let's face it, the kid is unbelievable. The front row, the hookers both play their part. Jamie Batty got through a shift. Delighted for somebody like Jamie Batty, who's not even his rugby journey, his life journey has, should have an autobiography in it somewhere. There's another one for you to write. The second row is the back row blend. Dobie getting on, making a decent impact when he comes on, and having to play on the ding-a-ling. Dunky Weir not getting on, but they seem so happy. Stafford absolutely buzzing. I was getting pictures through Roddy Dean's, Ben Afshar. What an experience for a kid like that. And then he gets to go on Scotland tour. There's a wave to ride, isn't? And Franco seems to have just got it right. You've dealt a fair bit with Franco. What has the impact been?
It's clear that the impact. I spoke to Al Kellett during the week, and it's clear that the impact that Franco's had has been massive, not just on the players, but on the whole club. And like Al talked about a togetherness and actually just, I think part of the thing that the Franco's brought is just embracing, actually, we're a rugby club for Glasgow, so let's make our traits about the things that embody the city. Let's work hard. Let's make ourselves tough to beat. And Glasgow maybe went away for that a wee bit under Danny Wilson. And look, Danny had a rough end to that, his time as head coach. But when Franco came in, they were in bad need of being shaken up. And they've, been in 2 finals in 2 years. They'll regret the way they played in the Challenge Cup final last year. I think Franco got his team wrong. But they've just totally sorted that out this season. And I don't think he's made any mistakes. I think, if you look at the way he's managed the squad, the way he's given those young players opportunities, I think like last night in a grand final, you're looking at Gregor Brown and Ewan Ferry standing on the bench waiting to come on and thinking, do you know what? That is absolute trust, because it would be easy enough to stick those boys on the bench. And like Jake White said it, the Bulls head coach, that he held his bench back in case of extra time. And to me, there's an element of a lack of trust in that those boys couldn't go on and make an impact, or they couldn't. He was worried about them.
But you've timed that beautifully, because I was going to say this about Franco and your point on Jake there. I don't know if it emphasises or echoes or what it does, but it's made me think. I've seen people saying Franco is a man of his word. So, I've been a coach and I've said things that are that kind of manipulative, whatever they are, to get the best out of whatever that situation is, or cover my own back, or whatever it is. Jake White saying that is kind of covering, I didn't give him a game for the reasons you've said. I probably didn't trust them. I remember interviewing Mike Blair after a game and him saying he needs to show more trust in his bench, and it was referring to Charlie Shield, who he hadn't put on. And then the following week he gave Charlie about 15 minutes. So he was, I don't know if he'd learned or if he was like, right, I've said that, so now I need to do that. Franco has picked on form. There's players that you thought maybe should have been playing and then weren't. He's told little stories about, here's a dram, we're going to enjoy a dram when we've won something. The bench giving young guys a game. He seems to have got the absolute trust without it being trying to please everybody.
100%. I think, look, let's make no bones about it. Keeping a squad of that size with so many good players happy all the time isn't going to be easy. I imagine during the week there was a difficult conversation with somebody like Ross Thompson, who you're saying, actually, son, you've dreamt your last game for Glasgow being a final, and I'm saying, nah, sorry, but we need Duncan on the bench for whatever reason. Do you know, like, those are, and I'm sure you've been in that position as a coach to have hard conversations with people, but they seem, and it would be really easy for that disappointed player to say, do you know what? Nah, toys are at the pram. I'm going to train at 50%. But actually, the buy-in from the whole Glasgow squad seems to be so good that, like, there was loads of boys. I say loads. There was a few of the squad left behind, and they were watching the game from fan zones in Glasgow. Now, you would be gutted if your mates are all out in Pretoria. You've won the league. They're away on the biggest party they can ever imagine. But actually, some of those boys seemed just as pleased from 9,000 miles away. And that's like, I mean, to
Well,
get.
I spent Friday night with Fraser Brown, who has given a huge amount to the club, and was able to tell the story. His first professional game was at Loftus, and his last professional game was at Loftus, which I thought was an amazing way to put it, because he wasn't even in the country. But as a professional under contract to Glasgow Warriors, that's his last professional game when his contract runs out. I don't know if it's today or if it's next, but you get what I mean.
Yeah.
But he wants them to win. He couldn't be there. Budgets are budgets, and we didn't talk about that just now, but they couldn't take the whole squad, so the whole squad couldn't celebrate. But the ones that have been left behind wanted Glasgow to win.
And they seemed to revel in the fact that, like, when they did win, they were going to have just as good a party amongst themselves here as the boys did in. Although I'm not. Ryan Wilson was doing a bit of cheerleading on Instagram last night, and I think when that live video ended at just before midnight, I think he might have spared a few folks blushes, because that looked like it was getting seriously carried away.
I worry about Ryan Wilson. I'm concerned he might not make it home.
I think Mrs. Wilson is probably having similar thoughts at the minute.
I've got a few Ryan Wilson stories that are definitely not for this forum, but I would be concerned about what he's up to. He's probably still going. He's some boy. It's an interest. I was messaging Dobie this morning, who's high as a kite, and I think they can't wait to get back and celebrate and see everybody and share it, and get the pictures with the trophy with everybody and all those kind of things. They deserve it, but the boys have got to be in Scotland camp tomorrow.
Yes, I think there's some. If there's some of them that are still going, I think we could pull names out of a hat of the ones that will have today stopped and said, "I'm not sure how approving Gregor will be of this tomorrow morning."
Yeah, you'd love to hear a story that Gregor's messaged them this morning and said, "Lads, we'll see you on Wednesday morning, 9:00. Make sure you've got it out your system. You've had a sleep on Tuesday night. We'll see you on Wednesday morning." Because it's Franco. I think the words were, "If you've played hard, you should party hard." It's not a play hard and enjoy it. Or it was, "If you've played hard, you should party hard." Those were his words. And we're talking, and I don't think we're getting over the top here. The biggest result in professional rugby era for a Scottish team, yet they've got to go back to work tomorrow.
I think I would like to think that between them, Gregor and the team manager David Edge have maybe sent a few messages saying, "Look, let's see you on Tuesday. Let's Wednesday would be fine. Let's not get carried away that we need you in on Monday morning." Or there might be a few boys going into Scotland camp with the old big sunglasses on.
Took my hammy. I'll just need to see the physio and do some rehab a day.
I think so. I think a lot of them will be a lot. Listen, that's a hard dynamic, because they'll be on cloud nine, and let's make no mistake, they rightly so. But they've got to go in amongst all the Edinburgh boys, and what are they thinking? Oh, thanks very much. We've been finished for 4 weeks. Yeah, this is great. Like, it's a hard one to get the balance of that right.
You have the pictures in the professional football players' house where he gets the whole team round to watch the opposition, and they look like when Leicester won the league and Man City and Liverpool. You have the pictures of them. It would have been funny if there'd been an Edinburgh rugby watch party last night. Like, were they all going nuts and celebrating for their pals, or was it a cheers, lads?
Well, I think I saw a couple of social media messages that said that Duhan was out there. Obviously, his brother was playing for the Bulls. So, was there a bit of split loyalties there, or has Duhan met the boys last night? I can't see it. I can't, So I think it is a difficult one. It's all those boys coming together in Scotland camp. Whether the Glasgow lads all walk in with their medals around their necks, I'm not convinced. But let's wait and see how they go on.
See, when I played in Hong Kong, and there was a guy who worked for the rugby union. His name was Jared Gallagher, big Kiwi, like tough as teak. Like his body was just solid. He was one of my first game in Hong Kong. I got hit late by this absolute giant after I kicked the ball, and it was Jared. But what a lovely guy he was. And he was playing for a team at the time. They were called Aberdeen. They've now changed. And I remember phoning him on the Monday, and Aberdeen had won the Grand Championship on the Saturday. And I phoned him, and he picked up the phone and went, "Jared Gallagher, Grand Champion. How can I help?" I was like, class. And I just think those things there'll be some wind-ups. There has to be. You'd be sad if there wasn't a bit of banter amongst them all.
And look, that's what the beauty is, as you know, and as I know, and as most of the people I'm sure watching know, that's the beauty of a rugby changing room is you'll get something like that, but then on the weekend or on 10 days' time when they play Canada, they'll be standing beside each other, ready to knock lumps at the Canadians together.
Yeah, and then the best birthday present ever. We mentioned him, John Manson. Having to do all the organising, and then it's his 56th birthday yesterday, and he gets that. I mean, and everybody loves him. I mean, he's a brilliant guy. I've known him for almost 20 years. Such a generous, kind guy. No ego. Wants everybody to do as well as they can. He's had a hand in so many boys' progress. What a celebration for the big man.
Incredible. But do you know when you go on holiday, and you'll know this better than me, but when you go away with two kids and you're worried about has this one got their passport? Have we packed everything? Is the cases all under the weight? Imagine doing that for like 50 folk. And then
especially rugby players who need their backside wiped.
And then when you get there, you've got to play a grand final. And then somehow you've got to find enough flights to fly all these folk back home. Like, what an effort that has been over. And I know they get a bit of help with it, but genuinely, like that, the majority of that has come from him, from Franco, from Al Kellick. And to go out there, it'd be your birthday, your team win the trophy, like incredible. Like, what a celebration. I hope he's one that's now got Kyle Staines' ski goggles on and is still going.
Pump will be high as a kite. And, he went away to America. He did his bit there. He came back. He slid right back into the role, and I'm delighted for him. Oh, class. Just a wee side note, mate, before we finish. GB Sevens had a good day yesterday. Held on. Ross McCann got a yellow card right at the end. Canada had a scrum 5 meters from the line, and they managed to hold them up and win the group. So things are looking all right. Big day today. That would be another great result for the weekend if we could pull that off and get GB to the Olympics.
100%. Yeah, like we talked about during the week, it's a tough ask because there's some good teams in that repechage tournament in Monaco, and yeah, as I must admit, look, I wasn't completely over the results yesterday, but they had a reasonable day and have put themselves in not a bad position. So, look, it would be huge if we could get to the GB men's team to follow the women to the Olympics, and hopefully when that squad was picked, there would be there would be a few Scots in it, because the boys have worked hard through that, and they've actually been some of their standout players.
I was messaging Robbie Ferguson. He's pretty chuffed. So I think it's a case of let's be chuffed, but let's not get too excited. It would be a good one to finish. Listen, fella, I take my hat off to you. You nailed it again. You called the semi-final win. I wasn't convinced, because I think head was ruling heart, but your head seemed to know something. You called the Donkey Weir onto the bench. Decent call, and then to pick that result and for Glasgow to produce. And do you know, I'd love a chat with Franco Smith. I'd love to know, because it seems like he's got it there. He's got a reputation that I think seems to fit. I think Danny Wilson maybe tried to please everybody, whereas Franco said, "Look, this is the way, but trust me on this," and they have.
They absolutely have, and he's nailed it. But I think, as we said, more than half an hour ago at the top of this, that the trick is now, let's absolutely celebrate what they've done, because it was a great achievement. But they've now got to go and back it up. I always remember when Man United won one of their Champions Leagues, the players now tell a story that Ferguson was on the plane coming home, and he says, "Right, look, I need to speak to you all. I've got a plan for next season. Now, make no mistake, that'll be Franco this morning. Whether the boys are listening or they're too hungover to care at this stage, but like, he will already be thinking, right, how can we back this up? Because that's their next challenge. They now need to establish that they're at that top table."
It's brilliant. I mean, personally, there's no chance I would have called this over the last probably half a dozen seasons and more. I couldn't see it happening. It's literally come out the blue, and they've achieved something brilliant. And it's now, like you say, if they can follow it up, it would be incredible, absolutely incredible. So, my man, you didn't quite make it to South Africa, but you got to chat to me, so that every cloud
indeed, Bruce. I wouldn't have changed it for the world.
Well, hopefully folk are going to subscribe, my man. £1 for 6 months, £12 for a year. The offer for £1 for 6 months will run out, so snap it up as soon as you can. You got all the great content from my mate Gav here. You can still listen to us on the pod and have a watch, but there's loads of great content on there, and there's more to come, because it feels like the season's over, but actually there's probably more rugby than ever. So from me, congratulations, the Warriors, outstanding. Enjoy the celebrations, and from him, he'll speak to you again very, very soon. All the best.